Welcome to Buzzed and Baffled, the podcast where the wine is flowing and the stories are strange.
Each week, we uncork a bottle, take a sip, and dive into some of the most jaw-dropping, unbelievable true tales you've never heard before.
From historical mysteries to bizarre real-life events, we'll have you wondering, is this for real?
So, grab your glass, sit back, and join us as we get buzzed and you get baffled.
Hey listeners, just a quick note before we dive in. Buzzed and Baffled is a podcast where we enjoy a glass of wine, share wild stories, and sometimes get a little, buzzed.
While we strive to share true and accurate tales, we're here for the entertainment as much as the facts. So take everything we say with a grain of salt and a splash of wine. Any opinions shared here are our own and do not reflect those of any other party.
Always drink responsibly and remember, the truth can be stranger than fiction.
Okay, it's been a day.
Yeah. How's your toilet?
My toilet is not any better than it was when I first started, but it's not any worse either, so...
At least you can still use it. You don't have to come over to use the bathroom.
It would be a long shuffle down the road from my house to your house. I was a little worried when I was trying to get... Is it the pump?
I don't know, because you have like a literal pump in your toilet, which I'm assuming is because you have low water pressure going through there.
Well, no, that new thing is the thing Bink got me, but it's the seal on the flange that's leaking. And so I said, hey, do you have, you said you had a really good, toilet system, a replacement, could you order me whatever it is you use? He only ordered the pump, which was fine, so I took the whole toilet apart, only to find out that it's not the kit that I need for the toilet. Busted up my nails. I am not impressed with today.
No shout out to Bink.
No shout out. And TikTok, you're on the list too today, because you refused to upload my video with sound for the first 40 minutes I tried. I'm just on a struggle bus.
Yep. Alright, well, now we got our levels good, and we can take a quick pause to give you a clean cut for editing and get started.
Okay. Oh, you think I'm cutting that out? No, that's staying in. So, today is my story. Kyla's going to do a blind reaction. And today, suitably, is a wine-themed story.
How apropos that we're finally doing a wine story on our podcast that we drink wine.
I am going to predicate this by saying that there's a lot of French words in here that I do not know. But my good friend Leah is going to correct me as I say things. So you're going to hear her telling you what I meant to say. So you can compare and contrast my beautiful language skills. So, today I have entitled this The Worst Crime.
The Worst Crime.
Because this is the story about a Chinese immigrant, and I'm going to say this name wrong. His name is Rudy Kurniawan.
By what you have written up on the board, I would say Kurniawan. Well, that's not his real name, so it doesn't even Let's just call him Rudy.
Yeah, so we're going to call him Rudy. So I want to set the stage. This happens in 2006. And for those of you who don't remember, the economy in the U.S. was fine up until about 2008. Mm-hmm. And then it was a real dumpster fire. Mm-hmm. For those of you experiencing our current economic system, it was a little bit better maybe than what we're experiencing now with the job market.
Yeah, now the economy is affecting everybody. Back then it was just homeowners. It wasn't as widespread, I would say. Like pain wasn't as widespread. Yeah. Certainly a lot of people were affected back then, but this seems more universal.
Because I know I am a senior citizen compared to you, mm-hmm. But I graduated undergrad in 2007. Where were you in 2007?
I think you got your master's in 2007, because I was in my third year.
I graduated in 2004. You're right. The dementia setting. Yeah. So, the the job market was tough back then, but I don't think it's as tough as I'm seeing it now for people. So, even though the wine market was going terrible, in this time, the rare vintage wine market was in full swing. So, enter onto the scene Rudy, who was born Zhen Wang Huang. I probably said that wrong, and I don't mean that to sound racist if it does.
We can have David come up here and tell you how to pronounce it because he, speaks Chinese.
I mean, he's so fluent in Chinese. Yeah. So he's from Indonesia, and he took the wine world by storm, and in the process took them all for a ride.
Wait, he's from Indonesia? I thought you said he's from China.
This is what Wikipedia said.
Okay, fair.
This is why we don't use it in academia, because it is not peer-reviewed.
Yeah, but we can use it here because we don't care.
That's true. I mean, if I can say Skittles instead of whatever I meant to say, I don't say that China is part of Indonesia. So, Rudy was born in China in 1976, but he attended California State University, and in the late 1990s, he was on a student visa. He sought political asylum in 2001, but lost all of his appeals. He was denied, and he agreed to voluntary deportation. He was supposed to leave no later than April 25th, 2003. However, he did not leave and stayed in the U.S. illegally. It was after this that his luxury crime spree began in the early 2000s. So, if you go to the website, buzzedandbaffled.net, and look at episode 7, you can see a picture of Rudy. He presents as a very charming, gregarious 20-year-old. And he had a knowledge and palate for vintage wines, which was surprising considering his age. So his focus was on buying and selling rare vintage wines for up to as much as $1 million.
Wow. Yeah, that's impressive. When I was 20, the only wine I was drinking was Boone's Farm,
which is like a wine cooler.
Yeah, there was no fine wines crossing my palate.
So he would have tastings of prestigious brands, including Domaine de la Romanée Conti.
So what she had meant to say was Domaine de la Romanée Conti.
Chateau Lafleur, with Hollywood producers, wealthy bankers, tech titans, and the like. These people had money. So, they found that he had an endless knack for finding these vintage wines that they could only dream of. We're talking like something called a 1920 Petrus?
Chateau Petrus.
A 1945 Romanée Conti, and the 1947 Chateau Lafleur, which is kind of like the creme de la creme of vintage wines.
We don't even need to put a correction in for your pronunciation of Chateau Lafleur, because that was spot on. Like, were you born in France?
I mean, I think so. Like, I might be native at this point. By 2006, he was known to have the best wine cellar on earth.
Wow.
So this is 3 years after he just decided not to leave the country.
So he's like 23 right now.
Yes.
And he has the greatest wine cellar on earth. That's insane.
Who's an immigrant, who was on a student visa, and has no job, so to speak, that we know of. So it was after this, so he had been wining and dining all of these tech titans, all these bankers, all these Hollywood producers, that he was able to get investors. And they were co-signing for lots up to $10.6 million to $24.7 million. Wow. And so they were doing this at the John Capone and at Acker, Merrill, and Condit. So these were the auction sites.
Okay.
He secured an $8.4 million loan from these people using the wine and art that he had as collateral. Some of the bottles sold included the 1947 Lafleur, which is the thing like everyone really, really wants. Okay, so now we're at wine education time.
You're such a natural educator. I'm very excited for this.
So, the first part of this is to talk about tonight's wine, because I bought this specifically in relation to the wines that we're talking about tonight. So this, I'm going to take a deep breath before I try this. It's the Bourgogne Côte Chaloniers? Chaloniers?
I don't know, I can't see what the words are.
Bourguignon Côte Chaloniers.
Okay, let me try. Bourguignon Côte Chaloniers.
So what she had meant to say was, Bourgogne Côte Chalonnaise le Passereau.
We're close. They know what we mean.
Le Passereau. It's a Pinot Noir.
It smells really good. My glass is like a foot away from my face and I can smell it.
Yep. So, wine education time is talking about the particular vintages that Rudy was focusing on when he was trying to steal from people. So the main one was Domaine de la Romanée Conti.
So what she had meant to say was, Domaine de la Romanée Conti.
So this is a Pinot Noir wine that comes from the Bordeaux region of France, which is, I want to say, from my memory, kind of like,
I know our listeners can't see what's happening right now, but Nicole is making a north, south, east, west map in front of her, and she's labeling them with her, like, mouthing the directions as she points up, down, left, and right.
northeast France is what I remember.
I think that's correct.
Like, I'm not great at getting there, but I get there. So, this particular vineyard, it was founded in 1869, in the town, I want to say Vosne-Romanée, France? Vosne-Romanée, France? And is considered one of the greatest, most expensive wine producers in the world. How much would you guess that a case of wine from this place would cost today? A case is 12 bottles.
Okay, and this was, is there a certain vintage year? Is this from the 40s?
A new bottle.
A new case.
If you were to get, like, last year's...
Good golly. So I watched the documentary Somme a couple times, so I know a lot about wine, for sure.
Oh my god, this is amazing.
No, a case, so 12 bottles of a new vintage or of last year's vintage. I'm going to say $120,000, $10,000 a bottle.
Oh, that's not, no. 6,600. Oh! I'm saying, that's super, that's pennies. Sign me up. So the property was originally built in 1232 as the Abbey of St. Vivant, and in 1631 it was bought by the Kronenberg family. No one knows why they renamed the property and why it wasn't named that. In 1760, there was a bidding war between Louis XV's mistress and her bitter enemy, Louis Francois, who was the Prince of Conti. Louis won.
Huh, that's interesting that, like, the king wasn't like, no, you have to just let my side piece buy this.
No, so the prince won. However, the revolution came, and the land was seized and auctioned off. So it passed for a few people's hands, and in 1869, it was purchased by Jacques-Marie Duvalt-Blochette. Blochette? Probably, I don't know what the enunciation would be. And it became the winery we know today. So that was the vintage, or the winery that he was focusing on. And the reason that the wine is so good here, so this is the important part, and she's going to know why I focused on this in a minute. So the area that this vineyard was built in has soil that is iron thick with limestone.
I was going to say, it must be mineral heavy.
It's mineral heavy. It's 800 feet above sea level, and the average vine there is 53 years old. The grapes are grown organically, and horses are used to cultivate the vineyards to avoid compacting the soil.
Oh, wow.
If anyone is wondering what the soil would look like there, I have a picture of it at buzzedandbaffled.net, episode 7, because it's very interesting. It is not the soil you would think that you would grow grapes in. It's sand-like almost.
Oh, wow.
It's like a mix between sand and clay. It's very interesting to look at.
Fascinating.
So, the grapes grown here are a Pinot Noir variety. And so the question is, why is it the world's best wine? Why are people willing for brand new cases that have not aged and you can't drink them, you have to let them sit? And it's supply and demand first. It's a small batch. They typically make less than 500 cases a year. Second is just hype.
Yeah, I know. Of course, with supply and demand, and it's a status thing to say, I have this bottle of wine. Even if it's bad, people would be like, oh, blah blah blah. This bottle costs so much money, and it's swill, but it's status.
Well, I'm like, I feel like if you're drinking a bottle from 1947, you get a 50-50 shot. That's salad dressing.
Yeah,
depending on how well the cork is held up. But I also know I don't have a spare 6K laying around, so I'm just going to rely on good old Bordeaux when the going gets tough.
Yeah, sponsor us.
Bordeaux, we're here, we're waiting.
Yeah.
And so the second winery he really focused on was Chateau Lafleur. This is another Bordeaux wine. In the 18th century, this winery was part of Les Manures de Gay, and it was purchased by the Greyloud family and was divided into two properties for the sons, the Chateau Lafleur and Chateau Legay. The property was inherited by two sisters in 1946, and they were like, meh, we don't care.
Fair.
Like, you can make wine out of this stuff, but we're not focusing on this. And so it just kind of like petered out until 1981 when merchants took it over for the one remaining sister, because one of them had passed. So the wine from Chateau Lafleur, which is what the wine we're drinking, is closer to.
Okay.
Or is it the other one?
It's close to one of them.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's a Pinot Noir, either way. So it's 60% Bordeaux, 40% Cabernet Franc, and only 1,000 cases are produced in this winery per year.
Oh, wow.
So today, you can still get bottles of the 1947 Chateau Lafleur, and it's called a Pomerol, and a Merlot is the best known Pomerol, but it's a particular flavor of it. How much do you think a bottle of 1947 Chateau Lafleur would go for? One bottle.
This is, I'm always so bad at when you make me guess.
I love it. So here's, guys, I will pull something up that I'm going to order, and I cover the cost of it with my thumb and make her guess how much the cost is. She's usually within $100.
No, I'm pretty terrible at fashion things. And mostly I just, now that I know you more,
I think she knows how much I'm going to spend on things.
Because before I'd be like, oh my gosh, not $200 for sunglasses, and you're like, oh girl, no. Like,
now, like, if I say, oh my god, where are my sunglasses, she's going to have a heart attack because she knows how much they are.
Okay, so 1947.
1947, and this is like the creme de la creme of the vintage bottles.
One bottle is going to cost $130,000.
Girl, you were way over it. No, $4,300 plus shipping.
Oh, again. Why are we drinking this live water podcast?
Maybe if I get a bonus next year, I'll be like, guess what, girl, I got. But if I do that, it will be salad dressing.
It's probably not that good.
No.
Like, I think we'd be disappointed.
But I'm going to describe it later.
Okay.
So this wine is popular because of the unusual growing conditions of that year. It was abnormally hot, leading to high alcohol concentrations, and a richness to the wine that people compare it to port. So, like, if you think about port, it's almost chewy and thick in how strong it is.
I'm glad we're not, let's not buy one of those because port is not very
We have to water it down, and then, like, people on TikTok are like, why are you watering down that bottle of wine? So it is said to lack the volatile acidity in age as well. Like the Conti, the variety of wine that is primary factor for the price you pay today. So it's hard to come by, small batches, and it's the hype. A 2020 case would cost $9,230. So if you think about it, for all 1,000 cases, they make $9.2 million a year.
Which is, I mean, I don't know. I'm assuming this is a smaller vineyard because they have a low production.
But also, like, overhead costs.
Oh, yeah. So, I mean, they're going to turn a profit, but it's not going to be They're doing it because it's wine, not because they're trying to make money off of it, like we are with this podcast. And then when we make it big, we'll buy one of these bottles.
Yes, that will be, like, when we finally make it big, we get our first deal from Bordeaux, we'll be like, we will buy.
Yeah, we'll be like, hey, Bordeaux, thanks for the money. We're going to buy this other brand of wine.
Just kidding, Bordeaux, we won't do that. We will put your sign behind us, and I will figure out how to video vlog it, much to Kyla's dismay.
I love being on camera.
Watch the TikTok video I posted today about the meal we ate.
You know, I started a podcast because this is a voice thing, and suddenly my face is all over the place, and I'm on TikTok, and this is...
Kyla loves the pictures that I made.
Mistakes were made.
But I feel like your friendship with me, like, there's regret.
Again, mistakes were made.
There's no escape now. So, back to Rudy. So it's April 2007. Rudy has sold 7 Magnum bottles of a 1982 Chateau Lapine at Christie's auction house. However, it did not go as well for Rudy as the Chateau Lapine contacted Christie to announce that the bottles were fake. Whoopsies. Yes. So they pulled the lot. But do you think that stopped old Rudy?
Of course it didn't, because you have more on your paper right
She's like, there's more pages. So old Rudy didn't let this stop him. In 2008, he sold several bottles he claimed were from Domaine Ponsat.
So what she had meant to say was Domaine Ponsat.
That were, Clos Saint Denis Grand Cru, produced between 1945 and 1971. What do you think the problem with this was?
They were fake.
Domaine Ponsat never made this wine before 1982.
Yeah, so the guy was probably like, hey, wait a minute.
Yeah. So here's the thing. Like, I feel that Rudy had, like, a sommelier's taste for wine. He could tell the differences between things, but he just didn't do the research.
Yeah. Like, he probably found these really good tasting wines and slapped a label on them or whatever, but didn't do the legwork to make sure they actually existed.
But also remember, it's 2008, so it's not like we had the world at our fingertips like we do now.
Yeah, we had Wikipedia come out. Maybe a little bit before then. But, like, also...
Wikipedia's open source.
Well,
someone has to write something.
There's probably not, like, articles at that time about super rare vintages of wine and their entire history.
No. Like, now, the World Wide Webs and the Tubal system connecting everything.
See, what Rudy needed was a poster like we have in our pod room.
I tried so hard with this poster.
Look on our Facebook page, and I'm going to make Nicole put this on the website too. She had a really nice wine types and pairings poster, but the problem is the manufacturer didn't scale it appropriately.
And they also printed it on fabric.
So what we have is completely illegible. It's just like squiggles where the word should be.
Like, the images are pretty.
Oh yeah, it's really nice, but yeah, take a look.
So we need to find a much better wine poster, but that one's staying because it's terrible. That's what I get for spending $14.
$14 whole dollars.
So he had these fake things, and it was caught. So after Ponsat notified the auction house, these lots were also removed. When he was questioned about this to determine if it was an international counterfeit or if he was innocently handling counterfeit bottles, he responded, "We try our best to get it right, but it's Burgundy. Sometimes shit happens."
Oh yeah, yeah. The international wine trade of extremely rare vintages. Yep.
Yeah, so it's like, whoopsies, get mixed up.
That's like the best thing. Like, hey, we think this is your new barrel, but sometimes things happen.
Or 10 milliliters, 100 milliliters. It's all the same in the end. So it all started to come crashing down 3 years later. In 2009, so if you look at the board, we have Bill Koch, who looks like a kind-old grandpa, but I'm guessing probably is not, because he's one of the richest men in the world.
I'm going to say, is he one of the Koch brothers? Him and his brother David, who are like horrible, horrible human beings.
I don't know.
Okay.
I didn't,
because his last name is Koch, so I think he might. If he's super rich, he's probably one of the
he's like, is it Koch or Koch?
It's Koch.
Oh, like Coca-Cola?
Kinda.
Oh.
It's K-O-C-H, the CH is
Well,
hard.
you saw who they just supported.
Yeah, they have, like, it's a whole, everyone knows about the Koch brothers. They're not awesome.
So,
And they have all the money.
well, he got hosed. And he filed a lawsuit against Rudy, alleging that Rudy knowingly sold counterfeit bottles to him and other collectors. So from here, Rudy struggled to make auction sales. What do you think he did then?
So I'm guessing if he couldn't do auction sales, he went to, like, private sales where he's, like, putting stuff on eBay or something.
So he went to private sellers, and from there he sold approximately $27 million worth of wines to CEOs and executives. So like finance bros, I'm assuming. He also, not surprisingly, defaulted in his loan, his $8 million loan from Acker, Maryland Condit. In 2012, another auction house had pulled a lot valued at $785,000 after it was discovered the wine had been obtained from Rudy previously. So someone else got hosed too. So it really came to a head. In March of 2012, the FBI arrested Rudy in California. They searched his house, and they found inexpensive Napa wines that he would pass off as vintage wines using old bottles, corks, stamps, and labels. So this is... I'm going to be handing Kyla the pictures of these things, because it's quite impressive.
I didn't know there was a photo lineup. Oh my goodness, you are prepared.
So, like, you can see these on the website, bostonbaffle.net, but this is, like, so there's, like, he would have replicas of the labels, and he'd have old corks that he would use to put in the bottles. This is kind of how he would set everything up.
That looks like the kitchen when I make beer. It's just like a bunch of bottles, and you can tell the floor's really wet and sticky.
And that is the wine cellar of all the counterfeit bottles that he had. Like, there's an impressive number of bottles.
I mean, I do strive to have this level of wine for our podcast here.
We need to get a wine holder for this room.
I can move the one from out there into here.
Don't we want a special one just for us?
I mean, yeah, we can. Well, it's not like David drinks the wine. Yes, we can get a wine. Maybe we'll bring a wine fridge with the wine tasting.
Ooh, that would be nice. Maybe we could take it from Brittany.
Brittany, we're coming for the wine fridge.
Okay, so they arrest him. He was convicted of, what do you think they got him on? Because it wasn't this. It wasn't like, you faked wine.
I'm going to guess what they get everybody on. It's going to be like wire fraud.
Mail fraud and wire fraud. In New York. He was incarcerated in federal prison in Pecos, Texas. He was probably very near Bernie.
He might have been near Bernie.
And he was released in 2020. He was deported to Indonesia in 2021. They said Indonesia on Wikipedia, but I'm guessing they meant China.
I'm wondering if he was like a ethnically Chinese Indonesian citizen.
His parents were Chinese, but they gave him an Indonesian name because they wanted to prevent stereotypes for him in
Did
America.
they live in Indonesia at any time? I think you said...
I think that they were from, like, China proper.
Okay.
But, like,
I was going to say...
and I know... like, person who's like, this is an ethnically Chinese name or this is a ethnically Indonesian name.
And I was just going to say, it's weird that if he wasn't an Indonesian citizen that they would deport him to Indonesia, but we see that going on every single day now.
Well, I'm like, is that just what Wikipedia said? Because they're just like, it's the continent.
It's Asia.
Like, we're Americans, we don't care about geography. Obviously, the Gulf of Mexico.
Mexico forever.
So the real question comes down to is how did he do it? So how does a 20-year-old man with no training as a sommelier, as far as we know, get people to buy millions of dollars of bottles and they don't know that it's fake?
I think he's playing off of the hubris of people who...
I'm sure hubris is a big thing.
They're big wine people and they have a lot of money, so they know what's good and what's not. And I'm actually cackling that he's probably giving them like Dark Horse or something.
Dark Horse, the wine of the skies. Or Gino's Rosé.
Yeah, just giving them something. And to to them, the status symbol and the label matter more than what the wine actually tastes like.
Because, like, so as this wine we're drinking right now, this is meant to kind of mimic the winery, the first winery,
and this wine is really good.
So, like, how would you describe it? So this is meant to be like the Domaine de la Romane Conti.
Okay.
And when I asked that of the lady, because I went to Everyday Wines, and I asked for this, and she was like, oh no. And so she had to call you
Marcy.
Oh, no, random. Okay. And so then Marcy came over, and she's like, girl, I got you.
So I do want to give a quick shout out to Marcy. Marcy was my college suite mate my freshman year. She was a sophomore, and Marcy became the first female sommelier in the entire UP. She works at Everyday Wines in Marquette. Stop in there if you're ever around. She knows exactly what, if you tell her you want a certain flavor profile, she knows exactly. And Everyday Wines is certainly not a sponsor. And Marcy's just a great person. So,
and the thing I like about Everyday Wines is they have every price point. Mm-hmm. If you want, it's probably going to be above, like $15 might be the minimum, but you could go $15 to $50.
Yeah. And you're going to get something good.
Mm-hmm. And if you're looking for something special, they will very definitely find just the right thing.
Yeah, I went in there and I said, well, I think it was for your birthday. I was like, hey, I want something super minerally. And they're like, oh, what about a Sauvignon Blanc? And I was like, well, that's what we drink all the time. Do you have something slightly different and new? And they gave me this bottle and it was incredible.
It was a white Bordeaux, which is one of my favorite wines.
Yeah, they know exactly what's up. So stop in if you're ever in Marquette. Say hi to Marcy. She might go by her full name Marcella now that we're grown-ups.
That could be.
I still call her Marcy, though.
The other place, if we ever get any listeners in the Chicago, Evanston area, is to go to, I'm just drawing a blank.
Wine Goddess.
I love it. It's LGBTQ friendly. They have great food, and when you go in there, they do wine tastings, and it's one of the friendliest, nicest places I have gone, and it is my winery of choice when I go down to Evanston, Illinois.
Nice. This wine that I'm drinking, and a lot of our listeners don't know, but I'm a former female director, and my olfactory zone, organs, whatever you want to call it, have kind of been blitzed out by formaldehyde, so I do have limited taste and smell sensations, so I can't always taste and smell things that are being expressed in wine. But
it's juicy.
It's extremely juicy. It's like
you salivate as you drink
like
it.
Like a ripe, middle of July blackberry.
To me, it's almost like if I were to cross a currant and a plum.
Mm-hmm. It's smooth and velvety.
And just a little bit smoky, like a little bit of tobacco in the end.
Yeah, and this is one of the better wines I've ever had. It's very good.
So this is something we can get again. I just got the one bottle because I was like, what if I hate it? Okay, so how did he get billionaires to spend all this money? And the answer is it was a long con.
Mm-hmm.
First, he built knowledge. He here's something I didn't write down, but I remember from my reading. In his family, multiple family members have gone to prison for being con artists.
Oh, so it's like he grew up knowing how to do this.
Yeah, so he was doing the family business. Mm-hmm. So he built knowledge. He went to talk to shop owners where he could learn all he could about the wine. So he went to the Everyday Wines. He went to Wine Goddess. And he learned about the wines that he's drinking so he can use the language to the people he's trying to sell to. If you've ever been to a wine store, you know that those who work there are a wealth of knowledge, and they really want to tell you what it is. They're excited about it.
They're excited about telling you something new and showing you something new that you may not have considered before. And that's what I like about going to these wine stores is, hey, I like this, but I drink it all the time. Maybe I want something similar but different.
Because if I'm going to a grocery store, they carry the same 5 or 6 brands, and I just got to buy what I bought. Mm-hmm. But this, it's very nice. So using this knowledge, he saw at that point in time that Burgundy wines were not that popular on the market. So he saw a void, and it wasn't saturated. So he was like, ooh, I can be a new player in the game.
Yeah, and he created artificial scarcity where it was like, oh, have you tried this super rare wine that only I have?
So the next step was important. He built trust. So those who knew him prior to 2006 would note that he would buy hundreds of bottles and would spend $400 to $500 of bottles at tastings for those he was hosting. So he was willing to spend money to build a reputation that he had the money to spend on this wine and he was trustworthy.
Yeah, he kind of reminds me, and I know I don't know yet, I shouldn't say, but didn't kill anyone, maybe he did.
That is not on the cards for this one. No murder this time, guys.
This kind of gives me an Andrew Cunanan vibe when he killed Gianni Versace. He did the same thing where he had this inflated sense of self and put him in these social circles where he really, I don't want to say didn't belong, but
he didn't have the financial standing to be there. He faked it till he made it. So by spending that kind of money repeatedly in front of those he was trying to con, he created confirmation bias. And so as we all know, confirmation bias is when we interpret information that it supports our prior beliefs.
Yeah, so if you see someone, you're like, hey, this guy knows what he's talking about, and then you see him drop a G on wine at a wine tasting, you're like, oh yeah, I was right, this guy's a major wine player.
Yeah. It's kind of like, if I go to Gino's and I want a Sauvignon Blanc, they're like, yeah, Nicole always wants a Sauvignon Blanc. If I were to order a beer, I think they might stroke out.
They'd be like, we need to close for the day.
Like, we can't do this.
The vibe is off.
Like, get out.
You should do that one day.
Just one day, and I should be like, I want a Bud Light.
When Daryl's bartender, just be like, a Bud Light, please.
When we go in for our annual Wednesday 11 a.m. session, I'll be like, I would like to start with a Bud Light. Daryl's like, first of all, no. Second of all, get out.
You're done.
So basically, he played the part. He had a Lamborghini worth $535,000, and that was back in 2008. So that's kind of where his money from that loan went.
Yeah, he's using the loan money instead of buying actual real wine.
He would often spend
Make this persona.
to what at least appeared between $100,000 to $200,000 a night. And as someone who's like likes to go out and likes to shop, that hurts my heart a little bit. I was like, oh, do you know how many purses I could buy with that? And so the auction houses were thrilled with what was going on because the prices of vintage bottles jumped 62% between 2001 and 2006.
That's super interesting just because now there's this guy who's like hyping these things up and making them wanted items. And of course the auction houses are excited because they get a cut of whatever is sold at auction.
Yeah. But confirmation bias, that's a fallacy that a lot of people fall into. It's something that I want to believe and it's something I think is true. So I'm only going to look for the information that supports it and I'm going to ignore anything that contradicts it. Lack of critical thinking.
Yeah.
But he got too big too fast.
Yeah.
It all came down to a numbers game. So those with knowledge of vintage wines noticed that the number of bottles he auctions did not line up with expectations.
Yeah, so if you're, if we know there's 500 bottles of a 1946 such
that was made in 1937,
and you've sold 399 of them at auction in 2008 or whatever, that doesn't really add up.
Yeah, so what it came down to, for example, when he tried to sell 10 bottles of the 1945 Chateau Patrice, they knew only 600 bottles were produced and only a few were known to still exist. So how do you have 10?
Yeah. Well, it's like the ace up your sleeve in poker. Like, if you put down your cards and you have 5 aces in your hand, something isn't really working here.
So the question is, where did he get it from? And in the end, it was Mr. Bill Koch, the pissed off billionaire, and the owner of Domaine Passant. Maybe I said it right that time. Domaine Passant?
I think it's Domaine Passant.
Passant? The T silent?
I think the T's silent. It's, for our listeners, it's P-O-N-S-O-T. Leah will correct us on this.
I mean, this is going to be cut in, so, I don't know what it's supposed to sound like. I'm going in blind because that makes it funny.
Domaine Ponceau.
So, Bill and the owner, whose name I can't remember, called the FBI, and that led to an investigation. After being suspicious that Bill paid someone to authenticate $44,000 of vintage wines.
Okay, so he was like the Pawn Stars guy being like, oh, I'm going to call my friend in to validate how much this costs.
I'm also thinking, like, why would you have that much wine that you're not drinking?
Well, and I think the answer is he has more money than he knows what to do with. He doesn't care that he has $44,000 in basically inert wine. Like,
but I guess, as someone who probably overconsumes more than she should, I can't imagine having an entire basement full of wine that I can't drink. I'd either be dead, or I'm at the world's biggest party, because like, why buy it if you're not going to drink it?
And that's why I have a hard time with these. I guess wine as an investment seems like a really unfun idea.
To me, that's like someone buys a Birkin bag as an investment. First of all, it's a purse.
Listen to you, it's a purse.
But it's meant to be worn.
Yeah.
So, like, if I can't wear it because I enjoy it and I find it to be functional or pretty or whatever the reason is I bought it, why spend that kind of money? I spend a lot of money on purses, but I wear them. Mm-hmm. I'm not worried about resale value. I'm worried about, like, I'm enjoying it.
It's like action figure collectors.
Dolls?
They're dolls. I'm being... Or there's people who invest in violins from the 1700s, and they keep them locked up in a bank vault somewhere instead of allowing a professional musician to use that instrument.
But the professional musician, was it a Stradivarius?
Yes.
Like, I get it. You paid $6 million for this violin, but you play it.
Yeah. And a lot of these musicians don't own the violins. They're on loan from these investors. Mm-hmm. You know, that's the thing where it's like, I'm going to buy this very expensive piece of art, but I'm going to put it in my closet at home. Like, share it with the world.
No, I'm going to hang it in my living room with my Ring alarm system protecting it.
I'm going to put it behind my toilet.
I was also going to say that, but... After becoming suspicious, Rudy paid someone to... Or not Rudy, Bill. I have a typo in my thing here. So that. 5 of the bottles he purchased from Rudy, which were $75,000 in total, were counterfeit. And so research by the Ponsant Vineyard that he was also part of his undoing, because he was trying to sell wines from 1945 to 1971, however, those were not made until 1982, so poor research. So when they arrested him, and they found all the stuff, he had 200 old wine bottles in various states of forgery, 19,000 fake, artificially created labels, and they were artificially aged, of 27 rare wines, with detailed notes on how to fabricate them. So he was taking, like, Napa wines and mixing them to match. He had buckets of corks, sealing wax, glue, and stencils, rubber stamps bearing the names of the chateaus, and formulas for recreating. He was like a mad scientist of wine. Okay,
what he did is super wrong. But I appreciate the hustle he's putting into it.
Like, he's not, like, just sitting
he's not just, like, dumping a dark horse into a bottle. He's, like, making blends. And that goes back to his, he doesn't have professional sommelier knowledge or training. He can taste these things.
I feel like he has an intrinsic knowledge. Yeah. So how much do you think he stole from investors overall? I want you to give me a number.
I've been really good at guessing numbers today, so I'm going to say... And this was over, 8 years?
It was from, hold on, let me go back. So this was from, 2003 to 2006.
Oh, so only 3 years, okay. From investors, I'm just going to say $27 million.
35 to 150 million.
Wow.
Yet he couldn't pay back his $8 million loan.
Well, because...
But it's like a Ponzi scheme, right?
Exactly.
You're stealing from Peter to pay Paul. This comes down to the similar wines. So, the one we're drinking right now that we've already talked about is the good one. The other one that we're going to taste is an American wine. And my friend Leah, who you're going to be hearing correcting me at some time during this podcast, she's taken some sommelier classes.
Nice.
And based on the terroir, which is like the soil and the conditions in which, she helped me find an American wine that I could buy locally. So this was one I bought at Econo.
Okay. Econo is our local grocery store for our international listeners.
And it's also not Econo anymore.
It's Marketplace Food or something dumb.
Like Tides or something? I can't actually say
Taddix, but
Taddix.
Actually, anyways, it'll always be Econo, just like it will always be the Sears Tower. Like,
It'll also always be D&M Bank.
Yep.
We're going to taste test this one next. Okay, so now we're going to do a dupe, compare, and contrast.
I love a good compare and contrast.
These wines were found by Marcy from Everyday Wines and my friend Leah, who's a sommelier, and she helped me find the American version of this because she was looking at the terroir, so she gave me recommendations. And I asked, as I'm in the store, we're talking about it, and she was very much, am I saying terroir wrong?
So you were so confident when you said it, and I don't speak French, other than, like, I know some food words, but I do know it's terroir.
God damn it!
Because when you say terroir, it sounds like you're saying terrier with a French accent.
So,
like
terroir?
Terroir. So it's Terroir.
Terroir.
Yeah. It's very hard for our American English speaking. And I was so confident. I let it go the first time, but the second time, I have a little more wine in me, and so it was a little bit funnier when you're like, the terroir.
So what she had meant to say was terroir.
So the first one that we've already discussed was from the Domaine de la Romane Conti.
Domaine de la Romane Conti.
If this were to be one of the old vintage bottles, how much do you think it would go for?
$600.
$17,000.
Okay, first I was way over, now I'm incredibly under.
Instead of a similar
Terroir.
Terroir.
So you're looking for grapes that have been grown in soil that have a high level of limestone. If possible, solid limestone with a good layer of clay over the top. With eastern sun, with the sun having sun most of the day, and it would be 40 to 50-year-old vines. Or, I was wrong. I thought this was it. So this one is this one. This is the Fry Brothers.
Yes, this is the American.
It is 93 points on the wine scale, which is a good point. You get this for $25. It is not old vine, and these grapes are grown in the Russian River Valley of California, where the terroir is known for cooler climates, and they have plenty of limestone with clay-based soil.
And this is our second wine from the Fry Brothers.
Yes, so we did the Sauvignon Blanc, which was really good. So the climate is really warm during the day and cooler at night, so it gives it a crisp acidity.
Okay, here we go.
It's not as good as the French one, but it's still good. It's sharper.
It is. It's still very good. As a comparison, if you said, here, taste this and taste this, these are two very different tasting wines.
Yeah.
But they're both very good.
I would drink them, have them with very different foods.
Mm-hmm. This one smells more, it's got more of like a corn smell.
To me, it almost smells like seawater.
And I don't say corn in like a bad way. It just, I don't know, it's reminding me of that sweet smell. It's not sweet wine.
It's not. It's very dry, like in the back of the throat.
And the smell is a little smokier to me than the first one.
But to me, it almost like if you've ever been at the edge of the ocean and you can smell the salt water, that's what it smells like to me.
I hope all of our listeners can hear me sniffing this wine.
She's trying so hard with her broken olfactory nerves.
And actually, me using that as an excuse is just because I'm not a super taster and I'm sad about it.
And so this in comparison, I was right the first time when I corrected myself. How much do you think a vintage bottle of Chateau Lafleur would go for? As was not nearly as much as $17,000. Much, much lower.
Okay, I'm gonna say this is the $600.
This is like $796. And this is from like, I looked it up and like, if I wanted to order a bottle from like wines.com, I could order it. So this is an estate bottled wine, but it comes from equal parts, the original one comes from equal parts Pinot Noir and Chardonnay.
Oh, interesting.
We all know how much I hate Chardonnay, so...
Whoops. You know, I would say buttery, not in the way that Chardonnay is buttery and gross, but buttery is a quality.
It's smoother.
Yeah.
The Fry Brothers is sharper.
I'm just sniffing both wines.
Yeah. And so, also because there's always a movie related to my things, there's a movie called Sour Grapes.
Oh yeah, I gotta watch that.
And it has, do you remember there was a show in the 90s about air pilots in Nantucket?
No, I was very young in the 90s.
I'm so old, and I do not remember, but I have the link. You can watch it for free if you are interested about old Rudy, if you want to know what happened. And the interesting thing is, Rudy, he's deported, he's still in China, but he's trying to get back into the wine game now.
Oh, Rudy, you can't, man. Everybody knows. We're on to you.
Well, I mean, he's never going to do it but maybe he could get some real sommelier skills because he obviously has a taste for things.
Maybe Rudy can sponsor us.
No.
Yeah.
Maybe he could make an honest go of it and help people develop good wines for like a winery, or do something that doesn't involve pouring dark horse into a bottle with old corks.
Yeah. And I know Asia is an up-and-coming wine area, and I think they produce actually quite a bit of wine in China, surprisingly. That's not something I thought would have been produced there.
But I mean,
he could definitely get into the Chinese market.
The growing areas, they have a wide range of areas.
Mountains and lowlands, and that would be a really good place where if he wanted to legitimately do wine stuff, that would be a good place to do it.
That is our story for today, guys. Nobody died this time. Somebody did go to jail.
You can't win them all.
As always, go to our Facebook page, go to Instagram, go to TikTok, tell us what you think. Look at the website for the behind-the-scenes information at buzzedandbaffled.net. And we will see you next episode where Kyla tells me a new and interesting story.
It's going to be fascinating.
I can't wait.